bunch of changes. So preview main thread, and then we're gonna look at all the individual balance changes while my stuff is downloading. So there's that. But yes, so character changes. Bear evolution no longer stacks, which is good. This is actually already in the game, so I don't know why this is here, but this has already been fixed. Wild Hunter Shift no longer grants +4 con, which it shouldn't. And the Shifter tree is now called Razor Claw Shifter is now called Razor Claw Shifter. Cookie Jar holds cookies. Feywild items had their effects hidden, so they're easier to see. And Frozen Keys no longer fit in ingredient bags, which is funny in general. Animated armors in the Extraplanar Palace are now properly vulnerable to rust. And Soul Survivors had cosmetic changes. I'm hoping this will stop people from crashing in Soul Survivor, although I don't think it will. Launcher, patching speeds have been greatly increased. So they say, and as we patch, hopefully that is true. I mean, we're at 13% already, so this is actually patching pretty quick. So that's not bad. Fire projectiles, sometimes thrown by fire beetles, will now properly display. Yeah, I notice sometimes they just hit you, which is weird. And the unique iconic race armors currently have some display issues, sure. So page 1, the Dryad and the Demigod raid. So this one, update 48.4 is expected to debut the new raid, the Dryad and the Demigod. It bears special mention that sound plays an important part of this experience with the new raid, in particular the ambient sound volume channel. Sound isn't required to complete the raid. We're just suggesting if you normally play with it off, that you go to this one with it on, as there's some fun new stuff in there. This is a level cap raid that is part of the Fables of the Feywild. To access the raid, on the previous server, talk to Sir Points a lot. To be granted specific points to purchase any of the Fables of Feywild adventure packs in the DDO preview store, you're likely to do search bar. The Dryad and the Demigod can be found by speaking to Hermia in the test dojo. Bugs. The raid space doesn't look great. Some characters do not have all their special attacks. Many drama sections aren't animating. Disabling sound on focus will also cause these song sections to terminate early. Teleporting inside the instance will cause certain voice music sections to be terminated before finishing. Currently, you cannot enter the raid unless you're level 30. All right, cool. So we'll be testing out the raid. We'll be looking at that tomorrow. New raid loot. Actually, I'm gonna do the raid loot last because we're gonna look at it in game once we actually get into the dojo. But we'll look at that after. So next, balance change, spells. So there's going to be a bunch of balance changes, again, that I want to talk about that I haven't been able to because they didn't ever talk about this. One of the main balance changes is with the spellcasters. They're making a bunch of changes. So there's the little preamble, so the preface. Nukers are fairly strong right now overall, but we've identified two particular outliers, Alchemists and Fire Sorcerers. There's several factors involved in why they're ahead of others, but one of the largest factors in both is their top-end spells. Multi-violent Meteor Swarm are significantly ahead of their fellow top-end nuker spells, largely due to good damage dice, below average cooldowns, significantly boosted cast level and area of effect. As a result, we brought these spells down to be closer to Acid Well, Iceberg, and Thunderstroke, and met in the middle on cooldowns, buffing those spells, 3 spells in the process. While this won't swallow the disparities between nukers and other kinds of characters, we believe this will bring them a little closer. Well, the closer together makes other kinds of wizards and sorcerers a little more viable. It makes partying with these nukers less one-sided. So if you may not be aware, if you do anything less than Reaper 7, a Sorcerer and Alchemist will come into your dungeon and kill every monster before you can do anything. You are literally standing around if you're playing any other class. Just one Alchemist or Sorcerer just takes care of the whole thing. So, making them more on par with other characters is an interesting idea. On the other side of the spectrum, a lot of offensive spellcasters that don't have access to Wizard and Sorcerer spell lists needed a boost. This patch targets offensive spells across a wide variety of builds and aims to bring up the floor of the spellcaster spectrum considerably. We've also fixed key bugs with the Druid to allow its premier CC ability, Earthquake, to correctly scale its duration in Reaper mode. We've also made a special effort to target underused spellbooks such as Artificer by giving them access to key offensive spells to round out their repertoire. Finally, we have additional plans to insert enhancement trees in a later post to address some of the remaining concerns of the Spellsinger and Arcano Technician specifically. We expect these changes to significantly boost the viability of Divine, Bard, Druidic, and Artificer offensive spellcasters across all levels of play. Important note, before we look at the spell lists, we will also, for each individual change, we'll also look at these individual casters themselves and their changes. All right. So, Alchemist, Sorcerer, and Wizard spell changes. Iceberg's cooldown has been reduced to 6 seconds and 9 seconds for Wizards. Thunderstroke is 6 seconds, Acid Well is 6 seconds, and Meteor Swarm is raised to 6 seconds. Again, this change makes sense. It just standardizes all of the spells, with Thunderstroke and Iceberg being single target, Acid Well and Meteor Swarm being area of effect. Standardizing the spell cooldowns makes sense. Multivial's cooldown has been raised to 9 seconds. I believe that Multivial was 6 seconds. It was I think it was 6 seconds. 3 seconds extra is going to have a bit of an impact, but not too much overall in terms of what your character does a lot of the times. Multivial's damage dice has been changed to a d4 plus 3 element per caster level per projectile. What is the damage right now? As a reference. So, Alchemist, spells. Multi-vial, level 5. Multi-vial was a D6 plus 2. It's now a D4 plus 3, which is actually the same number. So it's actually, this is the same number. So it actually doesn't matter. I don't know why they made this change, because a D6 plus 2 and a D4 plus 3 have the same average. It reduces the top end a little bit, because basically it's 4 to 7 damage, as opposed to 3 to 8. So your top end is a little lower, but your average is the same, so it doesn't really matter. Master of Spell Vials no longer applies to multi-vial. So basically they cut 10 spell levels off of multi-vial. So this is going to reduce the damage on multi-vial by 33%. That's pretty big. That is a big change. But then on top of that, they're also increasing the mana cost to 40. I will point out that I never really ran out of mana on my Alchemist, sometimes even during raids. So I'm not sure how bad this is going to be. We'll have to see. This is definitely a wait and see sort of thing. But the damage being cut by 33% and then also the mana cost doubling seems a bit weird at the same time. I think that is a bit of an overcorrection for sure. And Meteor Swarm's cast level has been reduced to 30 to 20 to match the other abilities. Again, I don't have an issue with the standardizing of the spells, so I think that's fine. But my Alchemist is probably going to stay as an Alchemist through this patch coming out, so I'll be able to test it immediately and then give you kind of some ideas. So it shouldn't be too bad. But we'll see. I think that this is going to have a negative impact on Alchemist as a whole, but I don't think that, obviously during the heroic process, this is not going to change Alchemist that much, since you're going to have mana to spend. At the end game, it's basically going to reduce the power level of endgame casters. And in essence, I honestly don't think that they are going to be hitting Dungeon Alchemists too much. I think Dungeon Alchemists are still going to be fine. You oftentimes went over the top on multi-vial anyway, so I don't think it's actually that big of a deal. I think it's really only going to hurt during raids, which Alchemists already struggle to compete with Sorcerers and Wizards during raids, since they don't really have the same reliable crowd control, most notably Otto's Dancing Sphere. So a lot of raids which have ads coming in, Alchemists don't do a whole lot sometimes when there's ads that need to be crowd controlled. So this is going to be the biggest hit, I think, is against raids. During the leveling process, you're probably not going to be noticing that much. But yeah, I also do think it's really weird that it costs 40. I feel like it should be 30, not 40, just because it's the level 5 spell, and level 5 spells cost 30. But so I think that this is definitely an overcorrection here. On the cost, I think 30 would be fine for sure. So there's that. Did they hard nerf Alch? They reduced the damage of multi-vial by 33%. They doubled the cost of the spell of multi-vial and the spell-like ability, and yeah, that's it. So yeah, it is going to be an adjustment. So next is Artificer. So Artificer spells are getting changed as well. I should make the text a little bit bigger so it's easier to see. Is it 50% loss from Master because max cast level is 10? No, the max cast level is 20. The max cast level is 20, Scythe. So it's going from 30 to 20. So it's a 33% loss. Alchemist multi-vial always had a max cast level of 20. It just, the tooltip read 10, but it was actually 20. A lot of people might not have known that, but you felt it in-game. Yeah, it shows 20, but it actually is higher. Should you leave Fire Sorcerer? No. Fire Sorcerer is still good. It's still going to be very powerful. You'll be fine, trust me. But yeah. Still way better than 120 or whatever it is in the non-SLA version. Yeah. Alright, so Artificer spells. Now they're changing a bunch of Artificer spells to make them more exciting. Before we talk about that, we're going to talk about the enhancement changes to Artificers, and also one of the combat style changes to Artificers. These are very interesting. I don't know if you're going to have all of this stuff happen, but we'll kind of see. So number 1, balance changes, Arcanotech Tree Tier 5. New Tier 5, Charged Recoil. Rune Arm shots now strip electric immunity for 10 seconds. Hallelujah! Hallelujah. Assuming that this works, and we're going to test it on Lamannia, you can now play a Lightning Artificer, or an Artificer in general, and use your lightning spells on monsters. Hallelujah. So, beautiful change. Beautiful change. On top of that, changes to combat styles. They're also adding an ability called offhand versatility for single weapon fighters. This is if you decide to play as a single weapon fighter artificer, melee of sorts, and this ability requires single weapon fighting and base attack bonus 8, so you can take this starting at level 12 if you're an artificer. Your offhand item modifies your main hand, so if you have a rune arm or an orb in your offhand, when you Vorpal Strike, your next spell automatically crits. This has an internal cooldown of 20 seconds. So what this means is, if you're playing as a melee artificer, you can now, whenever you hit somebody, you get a guaranteed crit on your next spell, which is going to improve the power of your spells that are now being buffed. Let's talk about that. Artificer spells. Static Shock has had its damage dice changed to 1d6 per Artificer level. For a point of reference, Static Shock was a d6 per 2 levels. So it's had its damage doubled. Lightning Sphere is a d6 per level. This previously was a d6 per, I believe, 2 levels. No, this was 1d8 per 2 levels. So this is a damage increase, but not as much. The spell Elemental Prod has been reworked. So Elemental Prod, this used to deal a d6 damage per level. Instead, now it's a d6 per damage of 2 of 3 elements: fire, force, or electric, chosen randomly. So it's had its damage literally doubled, because it's going to do 2 different effects. So there's that. The spell Blast Rod has had its damage changed to a d6 plus 3. This is actually not a buff. This is the same damage, because you used to do a d8. So this is actually the same damage, which is kind of interesting. Lightning Motes has had its damage dice changed to a d6 plus 2. Important note about Lightning Motes of this spell, I believe that's a 5th level spell? Or is it a 4th level spell? It's a 4th level spell. This used to be a d3 plus 3, now it's a d6 plus 2. So it is actually going to be a slight increase in damage of where it used to be a slightly higher top end, although it actually has technically a lower minimum, which is very funny. Prismatic Strike has been reworked. So Prismatic Strike now does more damage than it did before, and it also has crowd control effects from the original Prismatic Strike, which is kind of neat. And Tactical Detonation now does more than double damage, because it used to do, I believe, a d3 plus 3 per 2 levels of fire and a d2 plus 2 force. Now it's a d6 plus 3 force and fire. This is about a 4 times damage increase of Tactical Detonation. So Tactical Detonation may actually be an offensive spell. No. These spell buffs are not going to affect monsters. They only affect players. So just keep that in mind. Only players. So pretty cool. Artificers, are they going to become meta spellcasters? No. Most of their spells are bad, and the only spells, like pretty much all of these spells, are going to be good for leveling. And then once you're at level 20, you will only be casting Tactical Detonation and maybe Prismatic Strike for damage, and then also Lightning Motes for damage, because Lightning Motes gives you the vulnerability. But outside of Lightning Motes, Prismatic Strike, and whatever, these effects are pretty much useless. They have almost no value. However, important note down here, Artificer now has access to Firebolt and Shocking Bolt. Congratulations, Artificer's best spells are Firebolt and Shocking Bolt at the beginning of the game, and Artificers now have the spell Chain Lightning. On top of that, admixture spells are now probably restricted by Epic Defensive Fighting, so Alchemists can no longer use Epic Defensive Fighting as well. So that's an important note. You didn't need it, but if you did use it, it is going away. So keep that in mind. So Artificer's best spell is a Sorcerer and Wizard spell, and essentially you're never going to use Blast Rod, Lightning Sphere, or Static Shock. The signature Artificer spells, these are all going to die, but that's okay. At least it's good enough. So yeah, so there's that. So that's Artificer spells. Now let's move on to Bard spells. Bards are also changing. They're receiving a buff. So let's take a look at the Bard changes first before we go through the spells. Where's the enhancements? I can't believe I closed that thread. Oh, no, I didn't. It's already here. So the Spellsinger tree is being changed. So for those of you that are unaware, Spellsinger has one of the most expensive tier 5s in the game, costing 16 points to take all of the tier 5s. They are making a change to that now. So now Advanced Magical Studies and Advanced Musical Studies have been merged into one thing that costs 2 AP. So instead of being 3 AP, it now costs 2, and you get 200 spell points plus 3 Bard songs, and the spell Hold Monster Mass added to your spellbook at level 5. On top of that, Horn of Thunder, the spell-like ability, instead of splitting it between Horn of Thunder and Mass Hold Monster, is now going to be Horn of Thunder spell-like ability, and it costs 1 AP per rank, which is pretty neat. So that's a very good change overall for like kind of the split. But now you might ask yourself, well, isn't Horn of Thunder one of the most garbage spells ever? And I remember Strimtom was using Horn of Thunder, and it was really, really awful, and he hated it, and then he unspec'd it because it was useless. That's right, on my Bard build, I did do that. Let's take a look. Bard spells. Sonic Blast is now damage at d6 plus 1 per cast level. Sonic Blast is now a straight up mad DPS spell for early levels. Great idea. Good. That's just the heals. So right, the admixture? Yeah, it's just the heals. So there's that. Then we've got Soundburst. Had its damage buffed to a d6 plus 1. I don't know why, but now Soundburst is a DPS spell and a crowd control spell. Extremely cool. I don't know how this is going to work, but I'm so excited. Shout got its damage buffed by 50%, which is great. And Greater Shout got its damage buffed by 50%. Awesome change. Horn of Thunder is now a d6 plus 3 and sonic and electric damage per level. Now, oddly enough, you don't actually get electric damage as a bard in general, but let's compare this to the previous amount of damage that this ability did to say, okay, is this useful or is it useless? So it's doing a d6 plus 3 sonic and electric damage per level. Whereas before, it was a d4 plus 1 of each. So the damage has now increased from 2 to 5 damage times 2. So effectively like 4 to 10 damage per level. This spell is now 8 to 18 damage, giving it a pretty reasonable increase. It's about a 90% damage increase. Is that going to make the spell good? Probably not, but we'll test it out on Lamannia and see how it feels. But now you can also get it as well. Hold monsters at DC nerf? Yes, it loses 1 DC. Don't worry. Bards literally have hundreds of DCs. It's irrelevant. Bards get the highest enchantment DC in the game, so you don't have to worry about that. Hello and good evening. What's up, Mulligan's Gaming Pub? How you doing? You're sorry you're tired. Don't be sorry, dude. Everyone's tired sometimes. So that's exciting. So let's look at Cleric and Favorite Soul spells. There are no changes, as far as I know, coming to anywhere else for Cleric and Favorite Soul in here, so we're not going to look at that. But this is all of the damage spells. So they're going to change in stats. So let's take a look at these spells. Spell Nimbus of Light has had its damage changed to a d6 per cast level. Instead of a d8 plus 1, it's now a d6 per cast level. Congratulations, Nimbus of Light is now a useful spell for leveling as a cleric. Inflict Light Wounds does hella damage, a d6 plus 2. That's awesome. Beautiful, great change. Chill Touch has been buffed. I don't know if this is going to affect the Sorcerer and Wizard spell, but this is amazing for the negative cleric build. Deific Vengeance is a d6 plus 4 per cast level. Deific Vengeance is so good now, you guys. Oh my god, it's so good. Inflict Moderate Wounds, a d6 plus 4. Wow. Searing Light is a d6 plus 6. This is a spell that went from being one of the worst spells in the game to now it's going to kill people. Inflict Serious Wounds, amazing. Sunbolt, big buffs. Chaos Hammer, Holy Smite, Order's Wrath, Unholy Blight, d6 plus 8. These spells are very alignment restricted. You need to know what you're fighting against to be able to use these spells, and they got to be off alignment. But when you get the right one, it's going to come down. It's going to come down. Inflict Critical, big damage. Flame Strike, still useless because of targeting problems. Slay Living, big damage. Comet Fall, kablamo damage. Destruction, big damage. You can... Destruction's going to be damaged so high, someone makes their saves and they still die. That's awesome. And Firestorm, big damage. So congratulations, Clerics and Favorite Souls. It's 2021, but they're spellcasters now, baby. Give them a round of applause. Big applause. Cleric and Favorite Souls, they've been brought out of the muck. They've been bad spellcasters, or like very far behind spellcasters, since like 2014, and now we brought them back. Whew. Literally beautiful changes, perfect. Assuming all the changes work and are put in properly, beautiful changes. Just chef's kiss, you know, like beautiful. SLA was bugged and counts as level 9 spell. I don't know if it is bugged and counts as level 9 spell. That could be a problem, but they still have higher enchantment DCs than every other class, so it doesn't matter. Also, why is my hair going straight up? Look at this. Why? Why does it do this? Anyway. Druid spells. Again, no changes to druids as a whole. Spells have changed. No, Ulbelk. If they change monster spells, I should put this on screen, because people keep asking. If they change monster spells, they do not... Or if they change spells, monsters don't change. Monsters use the old version of spells. This is for players only. Alright, Druid spells. Let's see. Did they change any of the spells? Produce Flame now does +1 damage per level. Pretty good. That's a good change. Splinter Bolt does damage. Oh, that's a great change. Salt Ray does damage. Whoa. Call Lightning does... what is that? Is that double damage? Oh, that's really good. Fire Seeds does way more damage because it's d6 per cast level per projectile. Amazing. Word of Balance does like 4 times damage. It's still going to be at best mild. Whoa, that's so good. That's how bad Word of Balance was, by the way. Sunbeam is a murderer. God damn, the spell's going to be good. Holy crap. Sunburst, instead of being useless, is now going to do actual real damage. And Ice Flowers, a d6 plus 8 piercing and cold damage. This went from being one of the worst spells ever to maybe being kind of okay. This is great. Also, the Inflict Wounds mass spells are going to be changing to fix their new dice. Inflict Wounds spells only use the new dice against enemies. This does not work for healing players. Druid Spells Call Lightning Storm and Storm of Vengeance use Call Lightning damage dice. Call Lightning Storm is good. Yes. You know what this means, by the way? This means we got to do a high elf, or not high elf, a half elf Call Lightning Storm build, because now Call Lightning Storm is going to do hella damage, which is exciting. And all lingering spells are now going to hit the 6-second floor, where no lingering spells last longer than 6 seconds. Beautiful. Great changes. So the spell changes, druids, clerics, bards, we're going to be testing all these classes. I'm going to be playing a lot of time. That's why I'm drinking Monster right now, because I'm going to be up probably late tonight testing out stuff. Yeah, that's a big deal. Next is balance changes to enhancement trees. So, preface. The buffs we have done to these enhancement trees center around two goals: to provide a boost to spellcasting ability for Bard and Artificer, and to help equalize the disparity between Vanguard's T5 selection versus Knight of the Chalice and or Kensai. Correct, because, as it turns out...
Any updates to Chains' damage?
No chains updates. I'm very sorry, Brian. No chains updates. As it turns out, if no matter what Vanguard build you play, Fighter or Paladin, you use Knight of the Chalice and Kensai, Tier 5 and Capstones, and you don't use the Vanguards, even though Vanguard is cool. So we hope these focus changes encourage a wider variety of offensive spellcasters. Artificer in particular suffered from a lack of immunity bypass, and we think this method, tying it to your rune arm, bridges an important thematic and mechanical gap. Yes, I didn't want them to just give, like, bypass. Bypass is boring. But now it's tagged to your rune arm usage, which is amazing. I hope this means you don't need to use a lightning rune arm to bypass the lightning immunity, but we'll see. It's how it should work, but we'll see. Enhanced spell power causes several significant long-term gearing problems for both casters who had the elements represented and casters who did not. Either you had access to your element, which forced you to always wear this belt, or you did not, and you were left behind by a large margin of power. This change removes a significant amount of disparity between elemental types of offensive and defensive casting, and was a necessary step to the comprehensive offensive spell pass we are doing at the same time. And finally, the changes to Shifter are primarily bug fixes, but we also want to bump up Avenue for advancing out the fatigue that occurs after Shifter for shifters that are after shifting for shifters that don't get Tireless Rage from Barbarian. In addition, we want to bump the durability of B-side Shifter because no one's playing it as a tank. We are keeping the eye of the overall percentage placement of shifters and making it buff shifters in the future if needed. So, what are they changing to Paladin Vanguard? Shield of the Face has been merged into Armor Strength, so now it's 10 melee power and also 20% extra attack chance in one ability. Disorienting Smash is a D4 stacks of Vuln instead of 1. Beautiful change. +3 to hit damage in armor class while using a shield. Beautiful change. And Brutal Impact +1 multi on a shield. I'm assuming this is for the shield. It just says +1 multi. Either way, beautiful change. This is going to make you want to do Tier 5 Vanguard. And yes, we are doing Tier 5 Vanguard on the build. Arcanotech, we already talked about that. Spell Signature, we already talked about that. Razor Hide and Claw Shifters, the Beast Hide, Wild Hunt. And Razor Hunt Shifters now feeds clearly state that their effects block things that cannot be used while raging. Empowered Nature and Destructive Shifting now grant you immune to fatigue. So this is just great. This is a good change, by the way. Threatening Shift now grants you 10 PRR. So again, because nobody plays Beast Hide. And True Hunt properly lists its freedom of movement effect and no longer lists the non-existent immune petrification. It was an idea, and then they took it out. Enhanced spell power now works on all sources as equipment, so from all sources. So LGS weapons and also the spell power belts are gone. I've mentioned this before. I think this is a very positive change for the game. You might disagree. That's fine. I'm not going to talk about it now because I'm posting this review on YouTube. And then improved martial arts now work with all weapons you are centered with instead of just basic key weapons. This is great. Improved martial arts is the feat that gave you +1 W. And now you can use it with all weapons. In fact, I'm going to be using it on my build. Whoa, the Fire Sword build. How cool is that? And then lastly, balance changes to combat styles. So this is the balance change combat styles portion of the release notes. So, preface. When looking at the spread popularity and usage of combat styles, we came up with a few concrete goals. We wanted to boost the DPS and versatility of single weapon fighting, expanding its usage outwards to better cater to hybrid builds. We also wanted to tone down the DPS of two-handed fighting slightly while leaving the AoE capabilities top tier, as that niche is part of what makes two-handed fighting so compelling. We also looked at the DPS of two-weapon fighting and found that we think it's in a balanced place offensively. The companion piece for two-weapon fighting needed a lot of help to become more compelling defensive options. We ran through several iterations of two-weapon blocking before we decided to simply remove it entirely, merging it with two-weapon defense, and also wanted to further incentivize it by adding an MRR cap boost. Natural fighting needed adjusting to match two-handed fighting, but we also wanted to add some extra special incentives on top so that both bears and wolves would feel happy switching their feats to the new perfect combat style feat. Finally, we wanted to add more compelling combat actions for shield fighting. Its perfect combat style feat is very defensive, but that's shield's niche, and we wanted this to remain its defensive element at the top end. They're also coupled with some bust of Vanguard to make it competitive. So these changes are good. I'm not going to have anything negative to say, but we'll talk about that here. So first, there's single weapon versatility. It's a new feat that requires base attack bonus 8 if you're playing as a bard or a artificer. This is level 12 when you would be able to take this, and it requires single weapon fighting. Rune arms and orbs now grant when you Vorpal Strike, your next spell automatically crits. This has an internal cooldown of 20 seconds, and nothing in your offhand increases your ability score modifier by 25%. So what this means is swashbuckling and using a shield gives you more defense. Using a rune arm and orb gives you more crits, and if you decide to hold nothing, you do more single target damage. Pretty cool. Perfect single weapon fighting now gives you another ability score increase, bringing the total increase with all of these feats together up to 2 times ability score modifier to damage, and now you get more melee power. Two-handed fighting has experienced a 50% nerf on its increase in damage, which means now instead of 3 times damage to from your main stat modifier, it's now 2.5 with all of the feats. So it's a slight damage reduction. It's still, overall, if you have to put all of the numbers together, this is probably a decrease in damage of about 6%. Comparing everything else. So they're still going to be very, very good. You're not going to be losing too much by making this slight adjustment. Now, then there's also the new feat, Natural Fighting, which is Perfect Natural Fighting. So Natural Fighting feat now increases your ability score modifier to damage by 25%. Basically, they nerfed the bear form as well. The same thing with the two-handed fighting. And there is a new Perfect Fighting feat, which in bear form increases your damage by 0.25 and increases your armor class by 5%, or in wolf form gives you more health and sneak attack dice. The reason why this is cool is because it means in wolf form, you actually don't need to use epic defensive fighting if you take this feat, which might be good because wolves can cast a lot of spells, emphasizing the 17 druid wolf build over top of some other things. So very cool choice, very interesting. I do like this. On top of that, it's important to note, you need at least 1 copy of Natural Fighting. You could play as a Wolf Caster Druid, the build that I played, and get 15% confidence bonus to life, which is kind of neat. And now there is new feat, Greater Shield Mastery. This requires improved shield mastery and base attack bonus 13. You're exceptionally skilled with the use of a shield. Your physical resistance rating is increased by 10 while using a buckler, 15 while using a large shield, and 20 while using a tower shield. Your double strike chance is increased by 2% to 10%, and your combat style bonus melee power is increased to 10. So, this doesn't stack. This is just a bonus of 5 PRR. Like the 5 PRR, 2 double strike, and 4 melee power on top of what you already got before. And there's new Perfect Shield Mastery feats, which is here, which is you are the paragon of shield usage, able to effectively leverage shields of all types. Your shield gains +1 W, and you gain a +20% shield armor class, as well as 5 PRR. Again, amazing, really good feat. I can't wait to take this. Two-weapon defense now grants everything a two-weapon blocking did, as well as its +1 AC PRR and 10 MRR cap. Kind of cool. No longer a feat, should not be trainable. And shield mastery feats now contribute to epic defensive fighting, which means that if you wanted to play a shield guy, you can actually stay all single target and not take the two-handed fighting feat line, which means the Khopesh build is back on the menu and could be very interesting. Something I'm probably going to take a gander at and explore around with. Maybe even swap out of the Purple Dragon Knight build that I was planning on playing, and maybe just once these changes come out, do something else. I don't know. There's all these options on the table right now, and I want to look at them as much as possible. So that's the patch notes. If you have more questions, we'll be doing some other stuff. We're going to be actually looking at the stuff in-game. But yeah, those are the patch notes, and the loot we're going to look at in-game as well. So if you happen to be watching this on YouTube, because I'm cutting this out, check the next video for that one. Anyway, I should have the game downloaded now. It is perfect. And we're going to transfer our characters. No, I did not go over the raid items yet. We will be going over the raid items soon. You said you never got to use the belt while it was OP. Well, you've had 4 years. That's good.